Hi, welcome to Quirky Queen's Journals. My name's Kirsten. So, we're attempting another abstract, mixed media, mostly collage painting again today. So, this is another of my failed watercolour practices. They're not failures, I've learned from them. Anyway, so I've just used some black acrylic paint, and this is a little bit of book page, like a textbook book page with black acrylic paint circles. So you might recognise some of these collage pieces from the last video. I used that bit there and this bright blue as well. So this is starting off with a bit of a geometric feel to it. So I've been thinking about the different principles of art and about value mainly and edges, which I think is why I've gone quite structured here, quite sharp edges, and why it's went so geometric. However, it does end up going down the route of being more like a fairy castle to begin with. And I think that's purely because although it's kind of geometric patterns with the sharp edges, the colours are so vibrant. And I think the reason that the colours I've chosen are vibrant is because of the watercolour colours that were there at the very start. And I think if I'd used a different piece to start with, I wouldn't have went down this highly coloured route. So it just shows you the importance of what's on your page to start with. Oh, I loved that wee piece there. He's like a cross between a dog, a dinosaur and a crocodile. I watch a lady called Jackie Schomburg quite a lot on YouTube. She does a lot of abstract art. I think she might be self-taught, but I can't be certain. But she does use a lot of thick black lines. She uses a very thick black marker. And I was watching her before I did this, so I think that's why I've ended up using the black lines, like so thick and heavy. Oh, I'm so easily influenced. I'm influenced by my watercolour painting, and I'm influenced by a YouTube video I just watched. I did like where this black kind of D shape ended up because it's, you know, it looks like it's very precariously balancing on the edge of the creature. The creature. I don't know where creature came from. Anyway, so when I was talking about the edges and the values with regards to composition, so when the edges are a bit more blurred, it can create more the illusion of it being more in the background or in the shadows. But the more structured the edge, the sharper, the cleaner it is, the more it will draw the eye to it. So, I'm not saying it's a focal point, but it's more like a focal point and it doesn't go into the background the same. So that was what was mostly in my mind while I was doing this collage. It was about trying to create, I wanted to almost create like an oppressive feeling, as if using the blurred edges and the sharp edges, but it's quite, because it's trying to learn a skill, I wanted to keep it quite simple, that aspect of it. I was given chalk pastels for my Christmas, so this is their kind of first outing. I feel I do like them on the black, on top of the heavy black paint. It's got a kind of a, like a street art feel to it. So I'm using masking tape cut into lines. I think I've got 3 per strip, just to try and create something a bit with clean edges, but still a bit blurred by not. So it's should be cleaner on the horizontal, but more blurred on the vertical. So I like to keep these wee bits of masking tape because they're quite useful to use as collage. So that is a disposable paint palette. So it's got a kind of plasticky side to it. So it just helps, it helps make the masking tape removable again. So here we are. Totally forgot to press record on the camera, or thought I'd pressed it, is more like it. And so I have, again, kept to the geometric style and created clean lines and structures using gesso, but trying to keep what's inside of them is still quite loose and carefree. I really do like that, with the yellow ochre paint, almost like a ladder. The majority of what I do use to make collages with do come from the jelly plate. This is a few videos ago, where I made little card-sized abstract paintings using the jelly plate. So abstract's a learning curve for me, but it's something I've always been interested in. I have done abstract in the past, but more just about it was prior to actually trying to learn properly about it. So I feel like I'm coming in with a bit more knowledge, but there's still way more to learn, obviously. So this piece of vertical brown paper is actually quite, it's starting to create shape, because when I'd been reading about the edges and the values, and it was about looking at the old masters and squinting your eyes to try and, so that the highlights and the accents are really obvious. And on one of the paintings, I noticed a diagonal line kind of going forward at the left-hand side. And to me, it felt like a barrier, as if it looked like a barrier that somebody would be pushing against when they're trying to move forward. This is where you start to feel that it is starting to get harder to make decisions, because there's so much more going on now, and there's bits you like and there's the bits you don't like, and you're wondering to yourself, you're more aware of each decision you make now, whereas at the start you're kind of just having fun and seeing where it goes. So I'm adding the black line here just to try and make that kind of, barrier feeling more obvious. So I started out with the kind of grand idea of an area of the painting feeling trapped and oppressed by other parts of the painting. So the kind of middle-ish area feeling oppressed. Obviously, that is a really hard thing. Like, an extreme emotion is a hard thing to capture. But, you know, I am trying to use the edges and the values to create that. So the idea here is to keep the black line, the black kind of square that I've created. The idea is to keep the lines sharp on the outside of this square and to make them more blurred on the inside of the square, so that the outside looks like it's stronger than the inside of the square. Now, that makes sense to me. I hope it does to you too. I think it does give the illusion of the kind of inside boxed area looking like there is pressure coming from the outside into it. Obviously my black paint blending could be better. Do you know, I've been doing a lot of watercolours and going back to the acrylics. It wasn't, I think my brain was still in watercolour mode. One thing I have noticed about this is that this started off very, very, very colourful. And at the end, it's actually become a very neutral painting with little highlights of colour in it, which I just think that's great that you can start and end so differently. So I'm creating another area here that's to look like it's trapped and oppressed. I'm not sure how much that one does look that way, but it does add a bit of variety. Now this is where it starts to take on a fairy castle look, and I think it's the bright blue of the roof. The triangles look like they're a roof. And then this arch shape. I think the combination of both of them took it to a more, well, they're more childlike shapes, aren't they, I suppose? However, these shapes actually turned out to be instrumental in the structure at the end up and creating, you know, the end painting, the arch onto that kind of pentagon shape. It's not pentagon. It's a kind of rhombus shape. It's a square that doesn't have equal sides. And those triangles, they actually ended up really instrumental in the shape, and changing their colour did really change how they came across in the painting. I nearly gave up in this painting, not at this stage, a bit further on, because I just thought it was just totally not in a direction that I wanted. I like kind of more dark themes, but at the same time, this was a lot of, like, those circles there are watercolour paintings that I've been doing to practice. But then when I added the paint and changed the colours and kind of combined shapes together instead of them being separated, it really did. It just absolutely transformed it. And I was really happy with it when it was done. So this is me trying to simplify it with the gesso, to push a lot of it back and to try and work out kind of what's important in the painting, I suppose. Well, this didn't help with the fairy tale effect because I'd used the chalk pastels and there was purple watercolour in under there as well. They've come out, and so they've gave this lovely princess purple tone to the painting as well. But yes, adding in the gesso here did help get rid of a lot of the busyness, and it helped show off a lot of the shapes. So I do 2 or 3 coats of the gesso in some areas because I was struggling. I felt like the archway was just stuck in the middle and it wasn't doing anything. So this is masking tape, and I've just put some yellow ochre on it just to try and add a bit of cohesion with the yellow ochre that's on the right hand side. Do you know, see, for all I feel like it's been very random and that I've been changing direction, there is some parts of it. Clearly that shape that I made, that black box shape that I made, that has remained even to the end. That remained. So clearly in my mind, that is something that I was working with. So there was some direction in it, and I knew I wanted that oppressed, trapped feel. I just wasn't getting it with the fairy castle. So I just tried to put on lots of different pieces of collage for the next wee bit. I'm just trying to bring it somewhere. This piece was important and this stayed, which I was happy with. I also noticed as well that I did start off with quite strong geometric shapes from the start, and I have kept them. And also, when I've added in the black paint on the tissue paper, even that's quite a strong circle. Do you know, I think removing bits is actually one of my favourite things to do, because I don't know what it is, but it always looks good. And I think it's this, because I don't know what's underneath. I can't remember what's underneath, and when I remove it I go, oh yes. And it's probably the way that it looks against the white gesso as well. It just brings a bit more life to it. You know, when you remove something solid and then underneath it's different bits that have went before. I was disappointed when I removed the little red section, that it was that particular bit that was underneath it. However, the painting does end up very neutral, and see that red and those green circles and that stripe at the blue triangles. I feel that ended up as the focal point. And in amongst what ended up being a very neutral painting, they really stood out in the end. So just because you really like something or don't like another area, it can end up actually being the feature of the painting. Like, my favourite part of the painting was that kind of yellow ochre ladder we made at the beginning. And that red that showed through on the right hand side, that is actually part of the watercolour that had been a failed painting that I just used, as the base for this. So my favourite thing was removed, and what I tried to cover up from the very start ended up being part of the focal point. So I'm putting white on white here. However, it does still change it and it adds texture. And I do end up covering the yellow diagonal line with it as well, which makes that line a bit softer. So I've turned it round, and it looks so much better at this side already actually. But it's still a bit kind of whimsical with the colours that are going on. The archway, actually, I feel it ends up looking like a person's head once I cover it with the paint. And the strong geometric shapes to me look like, machinery or products. So that's where the idea came from of it, being like a person working in a factory, but also that, I feel that the black circle on the outside, the kind of loopy one on the right hand side now, because that's a circle as well, that's almost got like a human feature in my mind. And so that could maybe be like your boss or society or yourself, getting on at you to work harder. So I do feel like I've used, when talking about the edges, that I have used strong edges, but I've not really used a lot of blurred edges that in the end, push things into the background or make them look less strong. But it does show you that, your strong geometric shapes like your rectangles and your triangles in comparison to your more curved shapes, about how it does take on a sort of what looks organic and what looks inorganic, like man-made. As soon as I started putting the brown paint down, I could see it all coming together, and it really was a great feeling, because I just felt like I'd invested so much time and effort into it already, and I just felt like it was going nowhere, or it was going towards a fairy castle, which is not what I wanted. I should say that I covered up the purple arch area with a book page. So at this point, this is the last bit, second last bit. What happens here is I'm using raw sienna, just to make that shape more defined in there. But then I use the raw sienna as a glaze over all the white areas, just to bring it all together. And doing that actually made on the left hand side, the green circles and the red triangle absolutely stand out against everything. And I just feel like that helped it become the focal point. But at the same time, it was still cohesive with the rest of the picture. I feel like I got lucky. Because in my mind, they were almost like the products that were being made in the factory. Obviously, whatever the viewer thinks the picture conveys is what it is, but in my mind, that's what it is. And it just shows you the importance of a glaze, the difference it makes. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you soon.